She said it the way people say things they do not mean, in the specific way of someone who has gotten comfortable with a particular kind of wit. "Fix my Porsche and I'll marry you." She was laughing when she said it. Her assistant was laughing. The building manager, who had called the mobile mechanic as a favor, was smiling in the careful way of someone in a professional relationship with the person who said the thing. The man with the toolbox did not laugh. He was already crouched at the front of the car. He had opened the hood before she finished the sentence, and he was looking at something inside it, with the specific stillness of someone who has found what they were looking for and is not yet sure what to do with the finding. He stayed like that for a long time. She stopped laughing. Her assistant stopped. Even the building manager's smile settled into something else. "What is it?" she said. He did not answer immediately. He reached in with one hand. He touched something. He looked at it. "This car," he said, "should not have started this morning." She looked at the hood. "What does that mean?" He looked up at her. His expression was not dramatic, and it was not performing concern. It was the expression of a man delivering a fact that he wishes were different. "It means I need to make a call," he said. "And then I need to explain something to you. And then you're going to want to sit down." She looked at the car. She looked at him. She did not sit down, but she stopped talking. "Stay until the end. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this one travels." Sam Pryor had been waking up at 5:50 every morning since his daughter B was born, which was 8 years ago, and which had produced in him, over those 8 years, a relationship with 5:50 a.m. that was neither complaint nor enthusiasm, but simple familiarity. The way you know a road you have driven daily in all weathers for a long time. He was 39. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on Reed Street that had a parking space behind the building, large enough for his van, which was a Ford Transit with the Pryor Mobile Auto painted on the side, in dark blue lettering that B had helped design when she was 5 by drawing the van first, and then asking him what words should go with it. The van had 180,000 miles on it. It ran with the consistency of something maintained by a person who understood that the van was the business, and the business was the van, and there was no separating the two. Bay was 8. She had her father's directness and her own specific quality that was entirely hers. She collected words the way other children collected objects, not because she was told to, or because anyone had modeled it specifically, but because she had discovered at age 5 that words were the most portable and renewable thing in the world, and had never stopped finding new ones. She kept a notebook with a word per page. Just the word, the definition she had written herself, the sentence she had made up that used it correctly. The notebook was on its 3rd volume. That Tuesday morning, she came into the kitchen with the notebook open to a new page. "Serendipity," she said. "Good one," Sam said. He was making oatmeal. "It means when something good happens that you didn't plan." She looked at the page. "What I like is that it's not the same as luck. Luck is just chance. Serendipity is when the unplanned good thing makes sense in a way that luck doesn't." He looked at her. "What's your sentence?" She looked at the notebook. Sam finding the right road for the first time felt less like luck and more like serendipity, because every wrong road he had taken had taught him something he needed to know. He was quiet for a moment. He put the oatmeal on the table. "That's a good sentence," he said. She sat down. She put the notebook beside the bowl, with the care of someone placing something that matters, next to something that is also necessary. "I made it about you," she said, "without using your name. I noticed. Is that okay?" "That's better than okay," he said. She picked up her spoon. Outside, Reed Street was doing what it did at 6:15 on a Tuesday, which was quietly becoming the day. Sam had been running Pryor Mobile Auto for 7 years. Before that, he had spent 9 years as a diagnostic technician, and then senior technician at a dealership group that serviced European imports, which was where he had developed the specific depth of knowledge that made him the person you called when 3 other mechanics had looked at the same car and reached 3 different wrong conclusions. He had left the dealership not because something had gone wrong, but because everything had gone right. He had understood, at 32, that the dealership structure would always limit what he could see and what he could say, and that what he was most useful for was the problem the structure didn't have room to solve. He drove B to school at 7:45. She went in without looking back, which was how she always went, not because she didn't care about the transition, but because she was already in the next thing, the way a sentence moves into its own clause without announcing the move. He had 3 service calls scheduled that morning. The first was a starting issue on an older BMW in Lincoln Park. The second was a warranty check on a Honda in Lakeview. The third had been added that morning. a call from a building manager on Michigan Avenue who described a Porsche 911 that had been sitting in the building's parking structure for 4 days, with an intermittent start problem that the dealership had been out to see twice and had not resolved. He had taken the call because intermittent start issues on 911s had a short list of actual causes, and because the dealership's failure to resolve it in 2 visits was a signal about the diagnosis rather than the car. He arrived at 11:20. Katherine Lowe ran Lowe Meridian Group from the 14th floor of the building on Michigan Avenue, which was not the largest building on the block, but was the one her company had occupied for 11 years, first in a suite on the 6th floor when the company was 11 people, and then in progressive expansions upward as the company had grown to what it was now, 63 employees, a financial consulting and M&A advisory practice with $400 million in client engagement volume and a reputation in the market for doing thorough work without making the thoroughness feel like delay. She was 40. She had built the company entirely through referral, not as a strategy, but as a result of doing work that was good enough that the clients mentioned it to people who had similar problems. And those people called. She had never hired a business development person. She had never run a marketing campaign. She had never been on a list that she had paid to be on. She was also, by Tuesday of that week, at the edge of her patience regarding the Porsche. The car was a 911 GT3, 3 years old, silver, a vehicle she had purchased because she had wanted it for 7 years, and had waited until she was certain the purchase was not a statement she was making but simply a thing she wanted and could afford, and that distinction had always mattered to her. She had driven it for 14 months. In those 14 months it had performed exactly as she had wanted it to perform, and she had not once second-guessed the decision. 4 days ago, it had started throwing an intermittent warning at startup, and the dealership had been out twice. Both times cleared the fault code. Both times the code had returned within a day. She was not driving it. She had a loaner. The Porsche was in the parking structure, and it was bothering her in the specific way that unresolved problems bothered her, which was not dramatically, but persistently, a background note that did not go away. The building manager had suggested a mobile diagnostic specialist he had used before. She had said yes in the way she said yes to things that were in the category of practical and available, and already recommended. She had come down to the parking structure with her assistant because she had a 1 o'clock call that she was preparing for in the remaining time, which her assistant was walking her through on a tablet, and because she saw no reason not to be in 2 places at once when the 2 places were 30 feet apart. She had not fully registered the mechanic until he was already at the hood. She had made the joke because it was the kind of thing she said in informal situations when she was comfortable, wry, self-aware, quick. The assistant had laughed because the assistant knew her register. The building manager had smiled with appropriate professional caution. The mechanic had not responded. He had gone still in the way of someone who has seen something, and the stillness had its own communication. She watched him. She watched him touch something inside the engine bay with the careful precision of someone who was not yet finished understanding what they were looking at. She watched him pull out his phone and look at something on it. A diagram, she thought, or a technical document, and then look back at the car. She said, "What is it?" He said the car should not have started that morning. She said, "What does that mean?" He said he needed to make a call. The call took 4 minutes. She could not hear most of it, but she could hear enough. Model year, configuration, specific fault code sequence, a part number she did not recognize, question about service history that he was asking whoever was on the other end. He listened more than he spoke. When he ended the call, he stood beside the car for a moment with the expression of someone who has just confirmed something they were hoping to have confirmed differently. He came around to the side of the car and looked at her. "Your dealership," he said. "The 2 service visits. Do you have the work orders?" Her assistant already had the phone out, pulling them up. "The fault code they cleared," he said. "Both times. It's a low oil pressure warning in the PDK transmission. They cleared it. Did they inspect the transmission oil cooling line on either visit?" She looked at the work orders her assistant was reading. Her assistant shook her head. "No," Katherine said. He nodded. "The cooling line on this generation of PDK has a known routing issue, where it sits close to the exhaust housing. Over time, the heat cycles cause micro-cracking. When the line cracks, it doesn't fail immediately. It seeps. Slowly, the oil level drops over weeks. The pressure warning triggers intermittently. You clear the code because the pressure is technically within spec when cold, and the cycle repeats. He paused. But at the rate this line is seeping, and based on the number of heat cycles the car has been through in the past 4 days of intermittent starts and stops, the line could fail completely, with very little warning. Not a slow seep. A full loss of transmission oil under operating pressure. She looked at the car. What happens if that occurs while driving? Catastrophic transmission failure. Possible loss of vehicle control at speed. The parking structure was quiet. The building manager had gone still. Her assistant was looking at the car the way people look at things that have just changed. Category. Katherine looked at the car. She had driven this car for 14 months. She had driven it on the expressway. She had driven it at the kind of speed that the car was built for. I drove it yesterday morning, she said. To the office. I know, he said. The heat cycle data from the last startup is in the fault log. The pressure drop rate has accelerated. She was quiet for a moment. The dealership cleared this code twice. Yes, they didn't inspect the cooling line. No, the fault code doesn't directly indicate the cooling line. You have to know to look for it. Do they know to look for it? He was careful. It's in the technical service bulletin that the manufacturer issued 14 months ago. Whether they reviewed the bulletin in the context of this specific code sequence is something I can't tell you. She looked at him. He was not performing this. He was not dramatizing or inflating the situation. He was telling her what was true at exactly the volume it required. Can you fix it? She said. The line needs to be replaced. I can do it here. I'll need to order the part. It'll be here tomorrow. The actual repair takes about 3 hours. After that, the car is safe. Do it, she said. He nodded. He pulled out the yellow legal pad from his toolbox, which she noticed was not a phone, not an app, but a legal pad, the kind you buy at an office supply store, and which he used to write the estimate, in the way someone uses something they trust, and he wrote the estimate and handed it to her. She looked at the number. She looked at the parts and labor breakdown in his handwriting. You're significantly cheaper than the dealership, she said. The dealership has higher overhead, he said. The work is the same. She looked at the estimate. She looked at the car. When the dealership cleared the code twice, she said, someone should have caught this. Yes, he said. That's a liability question. It might be, he said. That's above my area. She looked at him. What is your area? The car, he said. The part arrived the following morning at 10:15. He had called the building manager at 7 o'clock to confirm the time, arrived at 10, had the car on the lift he had borrowed from a shop 2 blocks away before the part was in his hands. Katherine had cleared her 10:30 call, not for the repair, but because her legal counsel was already in the building, and they had things to discuss about the 2 service visits and the bulletin date, and what that timeline implied. He worked for 2 hours and 40 minutes. Her assistant came down at the 90-minute mark to ask if he needed anything. He said a coffee if it was easy. Coffee arrived 7 minutes later from the building's cafe, in a cup with the building's name on it, which he set on the edge of the toolbox and drank during the tup. 10 minutes he spent going through his checklist after the line was installed and before he would start the car. Katherine came down at the 2-hour mark. She stood to the side and watched him check the connections, check the oil level, check the routing of the new line relative to the exhaust housing. He did not rush because she was there. He did not perform thoroughness for her presence. He simply continued being thorough, which was its own performance in the way that real things are their own argument. When he started the car, the engine turned over clean, and the transmission warning did not appear, and he let it idle for 10 minutes while he monitored the pressure readings on his scan tool. Clean, he said. She looked at the car. That's it. That's it. She looked at the scan tool. She looked at the line, the new line, correctly routed. She looked at him. Yesterday, she said, when you opened the hood and went quiet. Yes. What were you thinking? He considered this for a moment. I was thinking that the person who owns this car has been driving it without knowing what was happening, that I needed to be sure before I said anything. Because the sure version and the unsure version have very different implications for what comes next. And when you were sure, I told you. She looked at the car. She thought about the expressway. She thought about the speed this car was capable of, the speed she had used it for, the transmission oil line seeping across those 14 months, without anyone finding it in 2 dedicated service visits. 14 months, she said, approximately. The bulletin was issued 14 months ago. Yes, the bulletin is specific to this generation. To this generation and this code sequence. Yes. She looked at him. You knew to look for it. I worked on this generation for 4 years. At a European import dealer. I've seen this failure mode before. He paused. Not at this stage. Earlier, which is why I recognized it now. She was quiet for a moment. The parking structure hummed with the ambient sound of its own mechanical systems. The car idled. Can I ask you something personal? She said. He waited. Yesterday, when I made the joke, the marriage joke, he looked at the car. Something in his expression was the slight adjustment of someone who knows where a question is going and is deciding how to receive it. You didn't laugh, she said. No. Why? He was quiet for a moment. Because I had already seen what I'd seen. And the joke. He stopped. He looked at her. The joke and what I was looking at were very far apart. She understood this. She understood it completely. That he had been holding something serious in his hands, while a joke moved through the air around him. And the distance between those two things had not allowed for a response to the joke that would have been honest. What is your name? She said. She had not asked. She had spoken to him for an entire day as the mechanic. Sam, he said. Sam Pryor. Katherine Lowe. She extended her hand. He shook it. It was a different handshake than the one they would have had yesterday. Before the oil line. Before the bulletin. Before the 10 minutes of pressure monitoring that showed a clean reading. Your daughter, she said. You mentioned her on the phone when you called the parts supplier. He looked at her. He had mentioned B's pickup time when he was confirming the part delivery window with the supplier, confirming that it would arrive before 3:15, which was when he needed to leave. 8 years old, he said. She collects words. Collects them. One per page. Definition in her own words. A sentence she made up. 3 volumes so far. Katherine looked at the car. She thought about the sentence in B's notebook, which she did not know about. She thought about serendipity, the unplanned good thing that makes sense in a way luck doesn't. The one where every wrong road taught you something you needed to know. What kind of words? She said. The kind that means something exact, he said. She doesn't like approximate words. She looked at him. Neither do I. Something in that landed in the space between them, in a way that neither commented on. He printed the service receipt on the small wireless printer in the van. He handed it to her. She looked at the line items, the part, the labor, the notation at the bottom that said, fault code source identified as transmission oil cooling line, microfracture, line replaced, routing corrected per TSB 1147M, recommend documentation for warranty and liability review. You put the bulletin number in the receipt, she said. You'll need it, he said. For the conversation with the dealership. She looked at the receipt. She looked at him. You didn't have to do that. The receipt documents what was done and why, he said, including what should have been done earlier. That's what a receipt is for. She folded the receipt. She put it in the inside pocket of her jacket, where she kept things she was not going to lose. I'm going to be speaking with my attorney about the dealership this week, she said. It's possible I'll need a technical statement about what you found and when. I can do that. I'll have my assistant send you the contact information for our legal counsel. That works. He began returning tools to the toolbox. She watched him for a moment. The specific order of it. The way each tool had a place and was turned to it as a matter of course, rather than as a closing ritual. Sam, she said. He looked up. Joke, she said. I want you to know I understand now why it wasn't funny. He looked at her. It was a little funny, he said. Something shifted in her expression. A particular shift that happens when a person realizes they have been given more grace than moment required. It was a little funny, she agreed. He picked up the toolbox. He picked up the scan tool. He walked to the van. She stood beside the Porsche and watched the van pull out of the parking structure and onto then Michigan Avenue. She stood there for a moment after it was gone. Then she called her assistant. Send the Pryor mobile auto contact to legal, she said, and pull the manufacturer's technical service bulletin for the Porsche PDK transmission, number TSB 1147M. I want it in the file before end of day. Done, her assistant said, and reschedule the 2 o'clock. I need to drive somewhere. A pause. In the Porsche? She looked at the car. The new line, correctly routed, clean pressure readings, 14 months of seeping resolved. In 3 hours by a man who knew to look for what he was looking for. Yes, she said. In the Porsche. 3 weeks later, B was at the kitchen table with the notebook open to a new page when Sam came in from the van with a folder. New word, B said. Tell me. Rectify. She looked at the page. It means to put something right that was wrong. But the interesting part is that the root is the same as the word for straight. Like you're making a line that was crooked, go straight. He sat down across from her. What's the sentence? She looked at the notebook. When the mechanic found what 3 others had missed, he didn't just fix the car, he rectified the line between what had been done and what should have been done, and the car ran clean after that. He looked at her. The mechanic. I made it about you, she said. Without using your name. Again. Okay. That's still better than okay, he said. She put the pen down. The lady called again. He looked at her. Katherine Lowe had called 3 times in the past 2 weeks. Once about the legal process with the dealership, once to tell him the dealership had agreed to a full warranty settlement for the service failure, and once, the third call, which had been shorter and had been about neither of those things. That call had been about a Saturday morning and whether he had time in the next few weeks for coffee, not for any professional reason, just coffee, and he had said he would check the schedule and get back to her. He had not yet gotten back to her. She seems like a good person, Bea said, with the directness she brought to things she had decided were clear. She is a good person, Sam said. Then you should get back to her. She picked up the pen. The word for when you keep waiting, when the right thing is already obvious is, she looked at the ceiling, searching her internal inventory. Dithering. I have that one in volume 2. She looked at him. It's not a good one to be. He looked at her. 8 years old. 3 volumes of words she had collected because she believed that the right word for a thing was worth knowing. Okay, he said. Okay, you'll call her. Or, okay, you heard me. Both, he said. She looked at him with the assessing look she used when she was confirming that both things were actually true. She decided they were. She went back to the notebook. He called Katherine that evening, after Bea was in bed, from the kitchen with the light on and Reed Street quiet outside the window. She answered on the second ring. Saturday morning works, he said. She was quiet for a moment. I'll find somewhere with good coffee. Bea has swim at 9, so I have until 8:50. 8 o'clock, she said. That's plenty. He looked at the notebook on the table, where Bea had left it open to the rectify page. The word in the center, the definition in her handwriting, the sentence about the mechanic, and the line that had been crooked and was now straight. She used the word rectify today, he said. Betcha. What did she do with it? He read the sentence. Katherine was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that is not empty. She's right, she said. That's exactly what it was. She usually is, he said. He ended the call. He closed the notebook carefully. He turned off the kitchen light. Outside on Reed Street, the evening was doing what it did at this hour. Settling. Sounds of the neighborhood finding their nighttime register. The van in the parking space. Behind the building with 180,000 miles on it. And the dark blue lettering. And the name that Bea had helped choose when she was 5, by drawing the picture first, and asking what words should go with it. He had told her then, your name on the side of a thing means you stand behind it. She had looked at the drawing. She had looked at him, and put our name on it, she had said. He had. If this story reached you, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And subscribe, because the next story is already written. And it starts exactly where this one left off.